Ron Klain is certainly no stranger to Washington. He also has been in the White House numerous times before. He was chief of staff to Vice President Joe Biden, where he worked on the Stimulus Act in 2009.
I think the top leadership issue shown here in the world today is how to deal with the continuing growing population in the world and all the resource demands it places on the world, and burgeoning populations in Africa and Asia that lack the resources.
South Africa and Iraq, everywhere such as, and I believe that they should, our education over here in the U.S. should help the U.S. or should help South Africa and should help the Iraq and the Asian countries, so we will be able to build up our future.
To have a healthy, happy life.
And that is our new Ebola czar, Ron Klain, opining on how to deal with the continuing growing population in the world, overlaid with the incoherent babble of Miss Teen South Carolina 2007, Caitlin Upton. Welcome to the Resistance, comrades. This is Forrest Wilson. And with no medical experience, our new Ebola czar began work on Wednesday. Ebola czar Ron Klain will report to National Security Advisor Susan Rice and to Homeland Security Advisor Lisa Monaco, according to the White House. Well, Rice and Monaco ought to make every American feel safer. But according to Congressman Peter King, Republican New York, a member of the Homeland Security Committee, says he doesn't want to scare anybody, but nobody should feel safe. And I do not feel safe. I'm not sure who does. I mean, with everything that's going on. Meanwhile, according to the New York Times, a doctor in New York City who recently returned from treating Ebola patients in Guinea became the first person in the city to test positive for the virus Thursday, setting off a search for anyone who might have come into contact with him. The Dr. Craig Spencer was rushed to Bellevue Hospital Center and placed in isolation at the same time as investigators sought to trace every single step he had taken over the past several days. I can imagine that is a daunting task. But consider this against the backdrop of last week, when we heard a portion of the Media Research Center's Dan Joseph's interview with Dr. Jane Orient. She is the executive director of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, who's an Ebola expert. I want you to listen as she explains how there are people who think the earth is greatly overpopulated and how Ebola may be an opportunity to take out 90% of the population. Jack, play clip 2.
There's been so much talk about how wonderful it would be to have something like Ebola to wipe out 90% of the population.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there are people who think that the earth is greatly overpopulated.
And listening to our new Ebola czar, I wonder if Dr. Orient was referring to him when she said, there are people who believe the world is greatly overpopulated. I mean, he does say that the top issue in the world today is how to deal with the continuing growing population in the world and all the resource demands it places on the world. Take a listen again to our new Ebola czar. Jack, clip 3.
I think the top leadership issue shown here in the world today is how to deal with the continuing growing population in the world and all the resource demands it places on the world.
Is this more evidence of the incompetence of the Democrats, or is this really something more sinister? And the lines are open, 904-222-TALK, 904-222-8255, if you want to weigh in on this. But it is suspicious, considering the bombshell admission unearthed last week by CDC Director Thomas Frieden, the man responsible for Mayor Bloomberg's New York citywide ban on sugary soft drinks over 16 ounces. I want you to take a listen as he reveals he was a community organizer in 2012, in his 2012 Oberlin College commencement speech. Jack, pull up clip 4.
Exactly 30 years ago today, I sat where you're sitting now, and a few hours later I rode my bicycle out of Oberlin and down to Tennessee, where I worked as a community organizer for a health clinic.
And that was the CDC director, Dr. Thomas Frieden. And if this doesn't cause you concern, consider the fact that Americans are now fighting conflicts on at least 3 fronts: Ebola, ISIS, and the Democrats' war on citizens and citizenship. It's too bad that soft, entrenched Republicans refuse to acknowledge this last conflict, the war on citizens, as they try to peel off as many Hispanic votes as possible ahead of the midterm elections. But I want you to understand that this fight is not unique, this war on citizens. It's happening in a number of countries. Wherever politicians perceive an edge with immigrant populations to ensure their political power. Citizens be damned. Listen to this clip from CBN News from April of this year. Jack, play clip number 9.
Not only is the problem being ignored, the French left and many mayors actively promote the growth and spread of sectarian Islam, for good reason. Muslims have become an important constituency of the left. 90% voted for Socialist President Hollande in the last election.
I mean, according to CBN, the French left and many mayors actively promote the growth and spread of sectarian Islam for their own good reason. Muslims in France have become an important constituency of the left. And I want to take a call. We've got Doc on line 2. Is that right, Jack? Doc, welcome to the Resistance. Go ahead.
Hey, I appreciate you bringing up the topic. I believe it's by design. I'm a true non-party person, so I don't care if you're a black president or a white president or right or left. It doesn't matter. I just call it like it is. It's kind of like taking some piranhas and putting it in the St. John River and praying that they don't multiply, and you know they're going to get busy. I mean, the CDC and the government, for not putting up restrictions on flights in, it's telling us something. I personally believe it's by design, and I personally believe vaccinations is the key. Nobody's talking about vaccinations. All these healthcare people who contacted the disease have had vaccination shots, and everybody over there are getting their vaccination shots from the Red Cross. Every person that's came down, 100%, has had vaccination shots. It's like a battery. When a negative and positive hits, something happens. And for the last person to be covered up completely and to come down with it, it's by design. And they tell you what they're going to do before they do it, like with the Georgia Guidestones. They want 90% of the Earth population gone. They tell you what they're going to do before they do it. Just like the good book talks about as in the days of Noah. And when you refer back to what Jesus said, he was referring to Genesis 6, and the word Genesis 6 uses the word violence. You look up the Hebrew word for violence, it's Hamas. Hamas is in the land, just like it was. Violence is in the land. Hamas, you can call it Hamas or violence. It's as in the days of Noah. It's by design, what they're doing, man, I tell you.
Doc, you seem very well informed. One thing that I'm not informed on, is there an Ebola vaccine?
Well, the thing is, they don't want to well, they're going to, of course, come up with something to make money. It's all about them making money, but they're going to they want people to kind of die off first. They want a lot of people to die now. But they're going to make money one way or the other out of it, because it's all about the elites love to make money, but this disease is spreading. It has no pattern. And for them to tell us, okay.
So you believe, Doc, that we ought to close down flights from Western African countries where this outbreak has grown to an epidemic. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I love that you said that, because one of the main reasons they say, have you came in contact with a person from West Africa? Well, why ask that question if that's not important? If it's important, close it down. You ask people who, if they go to the emergency room and they say, I think I've got the Ebola or whatever, the first question they ask you, have you been in contact with somebody from that country? Duh, close that sucker down.
Well, I would have to agree with you. Doc, thank you for the call. So Doc thinks we ought to shut down flights from Western Africa, which is something that I've been calling for and many people have been calling for. But I think there's something else going on here, and I think it's far more sinister than we would be led to believe. And I want to bring in my guest today, and he has written a very interesting article on President Barack Hussein Ebola and how he believes that this man is a treacherous traitor. And I'm going to let him discuss that in just a moment. We've got to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Keith Davies. I want you to listen to this interview. Very interesting man, very interesting position. You're listening to The Resistance. Forrest Wilson. We'll be right back.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
And now my next guest takes a much stronger stance against the administration in a recent article calling Barack Hussein Obama a traitor or an incompetent. What difference does it make? Keith Davies is the director of the Forum for Middle Eastern Understanding and the Walid Shoebat Foundation. He is also the director of Rescue Christians and a speaker on terrorism and how to stop it. Keith, welcome to The Resistance. How are you?
Yes, thank you. I like that. The resistance, that's what we need, resistance, because we are back at, I would say, 1775 at the moment. That's basically how I would describe where we're at in the United States in our history at this point and moment in time. And, unfortunately, the biggest problem today is the American people. Not enough of them understand what's going on in the world. They don't know history, they don't know geography, and they don't understand the issues, and that's one of the reasons why we're in such a mess.
And I agree with you. I believe we are at a tipping point. You write on October 8th, our generals advised the president for the need for professional ground troops to defeat ISIS. But our dear leader, again, refuses to take the advice of the professionals who understand military strategy. In fact, I understand there was a Wall Street Journal article that he's actually picking targets for these jet fighters to bomb. I mean, why is the president not listening to the commanders, Keith?
Well, because the reason he's not listening to the commanders is he has his real agenda is to allow ISIS to win. He knows that airstrikes on their own are not going to do the job. His generals have told him it's not going to do the job. And if it's not going to do the job, then why is he doing it without the proper support on the ground to be able to destroy ISIS? And now I can tell you from my other work that we do in Rescue Christians, as a direct result of Obama's incompetence or treachery, and not fighting ISIS when he needed to fight it, back about a year and a half ago, as a direct result, we have 50,000 orphans on the borders of Turkey, right, in the borders of Turkey in Syria and Iraq, in Lebanon, in Jordan, and in Kurdistan. That's 50,000 kids that have no mother and father because they were murdered by ISIS. The direct result of the policies of Barack Hussein Obama. And the rest of the world now needs to take care of these kids. And the mainstream media is not even reporting on this stuff.
And you also state in some of your articles that this is very similar to what happened to the Armenians around the turn of the last century. Talk about that for a moment, if you will.
That's correct. Well, the official figure is about 1.5 million Armenian Christians, but they leave out the 700,000 Chaldean Christians, and they also leave out about 300,000 to 500,000 Greek Orthodox Christians that were murdered by the Ottoman Empire, by the Ottoman Turks. So ISIS is basically an extension, right, of the Turkey. Turkey is supplying weapons. Turkey is training these people and turning a blind eye to what they're doing, right? And what's going to happen is they're going to come to the rescue in the end, so-called come to the rescue, but not because they want to rescue anybody, is because ISIS is just doing their dirty work for them, knowingly or unknowingly. And what you're going to see is Turkey's going to come in the end, and then they'll have their caliphate created. And the one thorn in their side is Egypt. And what you'll see is they're going to take over Egypt. Egypt is going to be invaded, right? Or the Muslim Brothers are going to rise up, and Turkey's going to come in and create peace there, right? So-called peace. But the Muslim Brothers are going to come back, and Turkey's going to be taken over again. And then the caliphate will be complete. Now, if you look at the policies of Barack Hussein Obama, they're directly in alliance with the policies of Turkey. For example, we'll start with Libya. Now, the excuse that they went into Libya from Barack Obama was there was an imminent humanitarian disaster going to happen, which was a complete fabricated lie. And I'll tell you, he used the propaganda against Gaddafi. Gaddafi was not liked in America because of the Pan Am Flight 103, the destruction, right? He was a villain by the media. However, he was loved by his own people. There was no humanitarian disaster. And people were getting gasoline for 10 or 15, 20 cents a gallon. They had mortgages where they had to pay 10% of their salary for 10 years and the house was theirs. There was numerous benefits. There was no reason for them to get rid of Gaddafi. They loved Gaddafi. Right, but here in America, the propaganda on both the left and the right, you hear about how bad Gaddafi was and we have to get rid of Gaddafi, da-da-da-da. But that was a complete fabrication. And it was the whole idea of bombing that and going into Libya was to empower the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamists. And if you look what happened in Libya today, it's a failed state. You have different factions of the different Islamists fighting each other, right? And the whole country is basically destroyed. And this was, again, the direct policies, right, of Barack Hussein Obama. And now the Muslim Brotherhood are in control or will be in control when Turkey takes over the north of Africa.
And that policy, just to be clear, is to remove dictators and empower the Muslim Brotherhood.
Correct, the Islamists, correct. Al-Qaeda, whoever. Or the Muslim Brotherhood. It doesn't matter to Obama, they're all the same. Look, Barack Hussein Obama was born Muslim. His father was Muslim. He was brought up learning Muslim. He speaks fluent Arabic, right? And his policies are all to help the Muslim Brotherhood. What? If you put 2 and 2 together, you get 4. If it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. In other words, he's doing the bidding of Islam, which means he must be a Muslim. But if you say that in the media in America, you are like an extremist, we have to take it for what his word is, a Christian. Well, have you ever heard Barack Hussein Obama's testimony as a Christian?
Well, he did say...
You won't find it anywhere, but what you will find is where he criticizes the Bible. And you're telling me that someone who's converted to Christianity is now criticizing the Bible.
Well, he did say in an interview with George Stephanopoulos, this famous guest,
My Muslim Faith.
My Muslim Faith, and I've had others on this show accuse him of being a Muslim, and I guess it's just hard for the American public to believe.
Well, because it's hard to believe because they don't understand, right, the history. They don't understand the geography. They don't understand his background. They don't know anything. They just get fed to them garbage in the media, and they lap it up, right, and they believe what the media tells them. Right, but if you search and you see all the evidence piled up based on his policies, based on his background, based on his worldview, based on we've done tremendous amount of research on him. His own brother, who was best man at his wedding, Malik Obama. I don't know if you know, but Malik Obama is Barack Obama's half brother, and they were best men at each other's wedding. We've done tremendous amount of research on this guy, and we have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt this man's a terrorist, supplies money to terrorists, supplies money to Hamas through an Al-Qaeda bank, and he got a 501c3 within 28 days. That's taxpayers' money, free, like donations going there, right? And I can't get anybody either on the left-wing media or the right-wing media to expose this. Now, we sent this to Mike Kelly, who is on the House and Ways Means Committee, demanded to see our research. Right, and then he folded up like he wouldn't go into it. And then we asked him on another radio show that he was doing a town hall radio show. One of my people called in and asked him the question, Malik Obama, that's a much worse scandal on the IRS. And Mike Kelly, in front of the audience on the radio, you can actually hear the actual interview on our website, stated that we were 100% correct. This is a worse scandal. And then my guy asked him, I said, what are you going to do, Mr. Mike Kelly of the House Ways and Means Committee? What are you going to do, member of Congress, if that's correct? And you know what his answer was? His answer was this: we don't want to make the job of the president more difficult.
How about the American people? I mean, where do the American people come in all this? I mean, what are our rights when it comes to the usurpation of power, the usurpation of the executive branch?
Because the Republicans, sadly, are just as bad as the Democrats. I'm a conservative. I'm not a Republican anymore. The Republican Party is just as corrupt as the Democrat Party. They're also in bed with the Muslim Brotherhood. Our government has completely been infiltrated by the Muslim Brotherhood. That's why if you look at Benghazi, that's another research that we did. we exposed that al-Sharia from Egypt was involved in this. We were told that we were nuts, that we didn't know what we were talking about by both people on the left and the right. And then Thomas Pickering, at a hearing in front of one of the select committees, one of the committees stated that al-Sharia Egypt was involved. And then he says, I'm not sure if that is in the classified report or is in the public report. I'm not sure. I hope it's not. Then we did our checking, and it was not in the public report. It was in the classified report. So we were actually exonerated, and we actually had all the research 100% correct, which means that the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt carried out the attack on Benghazi, which was an ally of Barack Hussein Obama. Now, I don't know if Barack Hussein Obama knew about it, but he is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's why it's deeply embarrassing, not just for Barack Hussein Obama, but also deeply embarrassing for the Republicans, because they're also supporting the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt as well. This is the problem. This is why you have not got the truth on Benghazi, is because the Republicans are just as guilty of the conspiracy of moving those guns. They were involved. Look, why is Mike Rogers giving up his position as the head of the House Intelligence Committee and giving up his seat in Congress? Because he's dead scared that something's going to come down on him. That's why.
Well, let me ask you this. We've got a midterm election in about 11 days. If not the Republicans, who? Who could you possibly vote for and hope that there's going to be any kind of resolution to all of these items that you've laid out?
Unfortunately, we have to vote for the Republicans, but we need to hold our feet to the fire. We need to have we need the Tea Party, and we need people who are conservative in the country, and we need people in the resistance, if you like to call them, to basically say, guys, you better get your act together because we're not going to vote you for the next time. I says, we're going to throw you out. We're going to primary all the time until we get rid of you, unless you're going to do the right thing for this country. The biggest threat we have is actually the so-called moderate and peaceful Muslims. They're not peaceful. Yes, they're peaceful. They don't fire guns at us, but their goals are exactly the same as the Islamists. They want to do it by political means.
Keith, I got to take a break. I wonder if you'll stay through. I want to continue the discussion. Can you stay for a little while longer?
Sure.
You're listening to The Resistance. We're talking to Keith Davies. I want you to stay tuned. AM 600 and FM 100.3, The Answer.
What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
And we're back. We're talking to Keith Davies, the director of the Forum for Middle Eastern Understanding and the Walid Shoebat Foundation. Keith, you've been criticized by many in the, I guess you would call it the left-wing media, in particular CNN and this Anderson Cooper. You guys, you and Walid Shoebat have really been talking about this for a long time. This isn't anything new. And you've been warning or attempting to warn America about the rise of Islam and radical Islam. Is this somewhat of a vindication? The predictions that you've made are really coming true. And this Anderson Cooper.
Right. Walid wrote a book back in 2007 called God's War on Terror. And I would strongly advise anyone out there who's a Christian and wants to understand what's going on in the world today to read that book. It's all biblical prophecy book that is right on the money. Hello?
Yes, and I'd like for you to give your website so people can go and view some of the articles you've written and also see some of the really disturbing images. You guys have done a number of video presentations on these, for example, these slaughterhouses and killing fields in the Middle East that you referred to earlier. Give us your website so that they can see this for themselves.
Shoebat.com. That's SHOEBAT.com. And our other website, which is we've been for the last 4 years, we started a division of our organization when we found that nobody in the world was doing this type of work to rescue persecuted Christians. We work in Pakistan, now we're working in Iraq and Syria, right? And we just started a program to try and save 50,000 orphans, which we found that the media is not even talking about, that the media is ignoring. There's no one in the UN doing anything about it. There's no one in any of the Christian organizations doing anything about it. So we found just on the border of Syria, across the border from Turkey, and also across the border from Iraq and Turkey, at least 25,000 orphans. There's also orphans on the other side of the border we don't know about, probably in a similar number, right? And there's also orphans in Lebanon and Jordan, right? So, you're looking at a problem. If you imagine there's 50,000 orphans, that means there's at least 50 to 100,000 parents, right, that have lost their lives right? And these kids were able to escape between the age of 2 and 12. And we've actually just today got news of a major European government that's going to be working with us to try and save some of these, which will probably lead to the whole of Europe helping us in saving these. I'm not sure about Barack Obama and the State Department, but when they get embarrassed into it, they might help as well. But the direct result of Barack Hussein Obama's policies has caused the death of their parents and these refugees. It's a real tragedy. You're looking at a mini Holocaust has happened over the last 4 months. Hundreds of thousands of people have been murdered, right, by these Islamists. And let us get it straight, guys. There's no such thing as radical Islam. It does not exist. It's called Islam, right? There's people who are of the Muslim faith, right, who may not carry out murder, but if you look at the ideology, and if you look at the book, and you look at the Hadith, and you look at the example of the Prophet Muhammad, it points to exactly you're a good Muslim if you carry out jihad, right? And you're a bad Muslim if you don't. So anybody who's a moderate Muslim who doesn't want to carry out jihad is a bad Muslim, and anybody who carries out jihad is a good Muslim. It's the opposite in the Christian faith or the Jewish faith. Right? So,
but you've got so many of these Muslims killing bad, quote unquote, bad Muslims.
That's right. They're killing bad Muslims, but they're good people, maybe. But they're, you know what I'm saying? They're not, and also then you have the threat of Shia against Sunni, and they kill each other because they disagree about the first Khalifa of Islam. Look at where the mess is in the world. Anywhere where there's a large Muslim population, right, whether they're in a minority or a majority, are causing a mess. They're causing violence, attacking people. And you get all this stupidity from the American people and the stupid press and your politicians. Oh, Islam is a peaceful religion. It's just the bad guys. But you know what? It doesn't matter if it's a peaceful religion. I don't care if it's a peaceful religion or not. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's say it. Islam is a peaceful religion, but we're killing people by the tens of thousands all around the world, and it's all being done by Muslims. So, okay, Islam is very peaceful, but they're killing tens of thousands of people. So what? So you got to deal with the people that are doing the killing. Look, all you have to do is go back to World War II. To say that all Germans were Nazis would have been a lie. But we were at war with Germany because the Nazis were ruling the roost. They were the ones that were in power. So we had to fight them. So this is exactly the same situation. It doesn't matter whether Muslims are peaceful or not, but the ones that have the military power, the ones that are doing the killing, and the ones that control the politics in the Middle East are the Islamists, whether the Iranian Islamists or the Turkish Islamists or the Libyan Islamists, right, or the Free Syrian Army, or the ISIS Islamists. They're the ones that control the power, and they're the ones that do the destroying. We have to destroy them. And you have a president of the United States that doesn't want to destroy them. And why? Because he must be Muslim, or he must be under their side, because any other president in the history of this country will be already at war with these guys, and they would have boots on the ground, and they'd be destroying them. In fact, we would never have pulled out of Iraq in the first place, because we knew, and all our generals knew, that we couldn't do it. But Barack Obama had to pull us out of Iraq because it was his political agenda, whether it was a political agenda for the left-hand side of his party, or whether it was because he wanted to support his Muslim brethren. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It was a policy that basically has brought us to where we are today.
Well, I thank you for bringing this to everyone's attention. Listen, the silence is deafening from our political elites. The silence is deafening from our military. I mean, we out here in the hinterlands hear nothing of what you're saying, and it's so refreshing to have your voice.
Well, we'd like to be saying it on the mainstream media, but they won't have us because they want to block us out.
It's stunning. Let's continue. What's the end game in all of this? I mean, how do you see this playing out? One more time, if you'll just summarize what you see happening.
The most dangerous country in the world today is not Iran. They're the second most dangerous. The most dangerous country in the world today is Turkey. Turkey is the head of the snake. Turkey's objective is to recreate the caliphate, as it's foretold in the Bible.
And this is a NATO ally. This is the only Middle Eastern NATO ally.
They're not an ally of the United States. They're not an ally of Europe. They were an ally of ours when they had the secular government prior to this. Remember, you just have to turn the clock back 100 years. The Turkish Empire, the Caliphate, ended at World War I by the British, right? Around 1917, the Turks were defeated, right? And then they became a secular country, and they dismantled the Ottoman Empire, right? What we're seeing today is the reconstituting of the Ottoman Empire, which is foretold in the Bible. We have many people who teach Bible prophecy think that Rome is the heart of Babylon. Rome is the beast. Rome is the false, is the Antichrist system. It's not. It's Islam, right? And one of the reasons why many Christians in America believe it's Rome is because the hatred of the Catholic Church. But it's not true. Right? If you look at every single nation that God destroys in the end, it's described in the Bible, and every single one is Muslim, described in the Bible today. And if you don't believe me, just check out Ezekiel 28-32. It mentions every nation that God destroys in the end. And if you look at the geographic location of every nation that God destroys in the end, they match up to Muslim today, every single one of them.
Well, you also write that it's a fact that President Obama has governed in contradiction to the powers granted to him under the Constitution. You reference Democrat law professor Jonathan Turley's testimony to the House Judiciary Committee. I want you to react to Professor Turley's assertion that the president is exceeding his authority. Hang on one second. Jack, play clip number 5.
I testified at the earlier hearing about the separation of powers, its history and its function, and also my view that the president has in fact exceeded his authority in a way that is creating a destabilizing influence in a tripartite or three-branch system. Now, I want to emphasize, of course, that this problem didn't begin with President Obama. I was critical of his predecessor, President Bush, as well. But the rate at which executive power is being concentrated in our system is accelerating. And frankly, I am very alarmed by the implications of that aggregation of power.
React to that, if you will.
Yeah, well, I think the reason why the President Obama is able to getting away with is because there's absolutely no opposition, and there's no principles in the Democratic Party, and there's no opposition or principles, right, in the Republican Party. If you have a Congress that's willing to stand its ground for its constitutional powers, then the president couldn't get away with what he's getting away with. The reason he's able to get away with what he's getting away with is because the Republicans don't have a spine. I mean, they want to win the election, the Senate and so forth coming up, but keep quiet, let the Democrats sell out themselves, that's fine. But let's see what happens after the election if the Republicans win the Senate and see what they will do. And I predict they'll do nothing. I predict that all they'll do is say, well, we don't have the executive branch. We have to wait till we get the executive branch. We have to be careful, wait for 2 years, and if we can win the presidency, then we can do something.
But if they get the Senate,
that's the nonsense we're going to get from these guys. Even if they win the Senate, that's the problem.
But if they get the Senate and he goes through with this executive amnesty, is there any chance that he could be impeached?
No, the main reason is that even if they win, even if they sweep in, right, and they win 11, there's a possibility they could win 11 seats if it's a whitewash. Most people think they'll win between 6 and 8, right, seats in the Senate. But let's just say it's a whitewash and they come in and they win 11 seats. That will still only give them about 56 Senate seats, right? In order to impeach the president, they need 67 votes in the Senate to impeach if it goes to trial, right? So there's no way that you're going to get 11 Democrats unless some of the Democrats realize that what Obama is doing is destroying the country. Now, there might be 4 or 5 or 6 Democrats that might look at it that way, and some of the sort of so-called blue dog Democrats, and the guy from Virginia, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Who used to former governor of Virginia. He's probably sort of more conservative, right? And a couple of others, but you're not going to get the 67 you need to get rid of them, and you'd be a racist to see if you get rid of them. I was very amused at Jimmy Carter coming out and criticizing the president there recently for his handling of the ISIS crisis. Now that's I like that, ISIS crisis. Isn't that good? And he was criticizing the president and saying that he did a very bad job. That means that under the basis of Jimmy Carter, that means he's a racist because you can't criticize the president because any criticism of the president is racism. And he criticized the president, so now Jimmy Carter looks like he's become a racist based on his own summation of what he was criticizing the Republicans for criticizing the policies of Obama. So, but it's okay to criticize the president if you're a Democrat because, that's righteous criticism. But if a Republican could criticize the president, that's racism. So to impeach the president Well, the problem is the Republicans are all terrified of being called racist. This is the problem. We're all paralyzed by this race nonsense, right? And I don't like President Obama, not because of the color of his skin. I actually have a problem with his white side.
I would have to agree with you. I have a problem with his white side and his black side, but I'm not a racist, Keith.
It's like that's the problem. We have.
Well, it's a fascinating expose. Keith Davies, I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And you've been listening to The Resistance. Keith Davies, the director of the Forum for Middle Eastern Understanding and the Walid Shoebat Foundation. Keith, thank you again. I hope you'll come back.
All right. God bless. Bye-bye.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
Those are some frightening revelations from Keith Davies. I hope you'll go check out his website and look at the information from the Walid Shoebat Foundation that has been posted online. It's just hard to believe. It really is. I want to take a call right now. I've got George on the line. George, how are you?
Pretty good, Forrest. How you doing?
I'm doing great. You're a repeat caller, George. Thank you for calling.
All right, I appreciate it. Keith Davies is absolutely right. I agree with him 100%. I started studying Islam heavily in 1979 when my employer sent me to Egypt, and then I went to Saudi Arabia and Brunei, 3 Muslim countries. And I was told the same things Keith's telling you by Muslims in those countries. And we are fools to assume that they're different kinds of Muslims. They all study the same book, and guess what? The Muslims took the worst passages, the most vicious passages out of the Old Testament, and Christians took the country and world-building passages out of the same book. It is a Jewish book, but it is only the things which happen once or twice to attack a city or whatever, stone people, kill people. And what we have here is a population that's starting to slowly wake up. Now, our view of world population control is make everybody middle class, and then they'll cut back to one or two children. Theirs is to kill people off, and so are the liberals. Now, Ebola is a biological warfare agent. I was exposed to it back in the 1980s in Saudi Arabia. And I'm immune. The rest of you are not, unless you've been exposed to a aerosol vaccine, which I picked up on some medical equipment as having been released before September 30th of this year. And it wasn't Obama who released it. It was a foreign government, because they were terrified that Obama has his fingers in this thing, and he has been actively working to spread it around.
Well, it certainly presents an opportunity for population control, doesn't it?
Yes. Now, I gave the screener an internet site, and don't give that site out at this point, because the people who own that company are scared to death of Obama. They have an FDA approval to sell the $17,000 piece of equipment, which detects a large number of bioweapons, and it also tells you what to use to treat them.
Well, George, I'm going to check it out. I want to thank you again for your call. I've got one more thing I want to get to today.
Congress is using that machine.
Very interesting. I'm going to go check that out, and we'll report right here on that machine in coming shows. George, I want to thank you again for all the information and calling in. I sure do appreciate it. And as the president subverts the Constitution and usurps greater power for the executive branch, you have Hillary Clinton appearing at a Boston rally for Democrat gubernatorial candidate Martha Coakley on Friday. Hillary Clinton told the crowd gathered at the Park Plaza Hotel not to listen to anybody who says, well, I'll let you hear in her own words. Jack, clip 7.
Don't let anybody tell you that, it's corporations and businesses that create jobs. That old theory, trickle-down economics. That has been tried. That has failed. It has failed rather spectacularly. You know, one of the things my husband says when people say, well, you know, what did you bring to Washington? He said, well, I brought arithmetic. And
arithmetic and disgrace to the office of the president. And my question is, please, Grandma Clinton, show me and show America where socialism and communism has ever succeeded in a greater standard of living for those it was inflicted upon. And again, we will have to have a revolution to get this country back from the likes of this woman. She is dangerous and really a part of the conga line of threats, including ISIS, Ebola, and the war on citizens. I'd like to hear your reaction to Grandma Clinton. Our lines are now open, 904-222-TALK, 904-222-8255. And, you know, there's another person who needs to be defeated in this next election, Charlie Crist. I want you to take a look at his website. I'm going to read you some of the stuff that's on there. You know, he's a Democrat, and he's actively promoting the growth of illegal immigration with our open border. In fact, he is basically, well, you have to read his website, but I want to read a portion of it. But I will say one thing about Charlie Crist. He's got a really, really great tan. But on Charlie's website, under immigration, it says, while Florida cannot set national immigration policy, there are many things we can do as a state, such as helping dreamers. We must immediately pass legislation that allows the children of undocumented parents. Do you notice how they're they're illegal aliens, anyways. Allows the children of undocumented parents to attend Florida colleges and universities at in-state tuition levels. It simply isn't fair to punish children of undocumented parents. And, you know, Charlie, what about the citizens of this country? How about the people that come here out of state and have to pay out-of-state tuition? And what you're saying, Charlie, is citizens be damned. Further, Governor Scott should, and this is on Charlie Crist's website, it says, further, Governor Scott should have signed the law allowing these students to receive legal driver's licenses. This law would have allowed them to continue receiving their education and would help make our roads safer, keeping Florida's doors open. Governor Scott supports and pushed for Florida to create an Arizona-style immigration law of racial profiling. This law could put many law-abiding citizens at risk and would be the same as putting a close sign on the state's doorstep. You know, Charlie, the problem with all this is you're just supporting illegal immigration. And I believe, as many Floridians believe, this is a real problem for this country. It's a real problem for the Republican Party. And, Charlie, in your words, I'm sure you're saying behind the scenes, citizens be damned. And where do you fit in Charlie Crist's agenda? Well, you don't. You see, Charlie, like many leftists, want to see a single-party rule, much like his French leftist counterparts, which we heard from earlier, and all leftists, for that matter, who will simply import their constituents when indigenous people threaten their power, careers, and longevity. This man is a traitor, by definition. I mean, how the hell can you proclaim to be a Republican, albeit a liberal Republican, for all those years? How? And then switch sides to become a leftist Democrat. He was never a Republican. And the sooner we get rid of and eradicate these liberal Republicans, the better. Mr. Crist, you did the party a favor. And now it's up to us to do Florida a favor. Vote for his opponent, Rick Scott. I hope you'll tune in each and every week. You're listening to The Resistance, Forrest Wilson, AM 600 and FM 100.3, The Answer. See you next week.